Welcome back to No Disintegrations. Dave and I break down our thoughts on what's going on from the prequels, the original trilogy, and the Disney Lucasfilm sequels, as well as Star Wars television series. If you want a different take on the science fiction genre, particularly Star Wars, we would be honored if you would join us. And remember, he's no good to me dead. Welcome back to No Disintegrations. I'm your host, Rob. I got Dave here. We're going to talk about Ashoka Episode 3. Would you even call that an episode? I personally was a little disappointed. I didn't think it lived up to any of the hype. I was super disappointed in the fact that it just seemed vacant. It was just like an empty episode, and maybe that's just my opinion. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dave?
I agree. It was just like a filler episode. When you think of filler, I mean, filler of what? You know, the only thing I took of any real significance that the casual viewer might not know about or care about is, and which was revealed in this episode, were the Purgles.
Yeah, well,
these space whales that run in channels between galaxies. But other than that, I mean,
yeah, it was not much of a episode. And again, that episode legit was a throwaway. If that episode was a throwaway, if you look at it from the perspective of like if you watched Rebels, there's nothing new. There's no new information that came out of that. Zero.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just like, why are we watching this? Like,
well, and that's the thing. It was like they were just throwing a bone to the casual observer to see where this might go or open up other pathways of significance. There's still probably a lot of that going on just over the conversation of Dathomir. Oh, and there's witches now. Well, yeah, there's everything. But it's not, I mean, it's being packaged in a way to fit an 8-episode timeline with, you know, like what you and I might call fluff. You know, kind of like episode 2 of Mando 2, the frog lady. Remember her delivering eggs to some godforsaken place? Yeah,
and again, it was tied to a tangible outcome, but he could have found out where the Mandalorians were hiding with or without that side quest, for lack of a better term.
Right.
You know, and I think that's, again, I think right now the show is firmly landed into, hey, we don't know where we're going territory. Right. I mean, I legitimately think that they just don't know. They just don't know. It's
it's funny you even put it in that context too, because when you put it in that context, it's like busy work. You know, being handed work just for the sake of being busy, and that's kind of what I took from that.
Yeah, no,
you know, even the whole fight. You know, they're being chased down by Shin Hati.
Yeah, like that wasn't even cool because like all of a sudden they've got a fleet of mercenaries. Like what is going on? There's no backstory there. I don't think it's ever going to be revealed. There's pieces that should be explained that aren't, and then parts that shouldn't be explained are being explained. You know what I mean? So like, hey, right. I don't need an explanation of the Purgles, right? I'm more concerned with, Shin Hati is attacking them with a fleet of starships. Where the F did these guys come from? Right? Like that is a more important question than that. Or did they steal them? You know, did they steal them from the pirate captain in Mandalorian? Are they from another universe? Are these guys parts of the Knights of Ren? Are they?
Were the dudes hanging out with what was this, Balin? At the end, who are they? And he just sends them off into the tree line to go smoke them because they're hiding in the woods with a broke ship.
Yeah, who are these dudes?
I mean, so he just happened to be on that planet with a stack of mercs at his disposal. I don't know.
Yeah, I said, this entire episode just felt light and lost. Hey, we're gonna have to pause for a second because I got to check.
See what's up with the.
Back at it. So let's start from the beginning though. So your opening scene, was Sabine doing lightsaber training on the ship. All right. So from that perspective, one, like that girl needs to put some meat on her bones. She is not physically imposing. And because she is so damn skinny, she's not believable. She's not believable as an actual
Don't
person.
even get me going. I just had this conversation about one of the most beautiful women in all of Hollywood, and that what's her name? Zoe.
Yeah.
You know who I'm thinking of? She was in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Zoe Saldana. But guess
there,
what?
dude, she's smoking. She's in this thing now called the Lioness. Like she's out there murking dudes. No training, weighs 100 pounds, 4 feet tall. It just isn't believable, man.
Yeah. I mean, look at it this way. Scarlett Johansson puts on weight when she played Black Widow. You know what I mean?
Right. She needed
in order for you to be believable, you got to be too something to move something, and that is not, and that's not offensive. That's for everybody. Like if you want to have
Charlize Theron was more convincible in
yes.
What was it? Where she was Atomic Blonde.
Atomic Blonde, yeah. But Charlize Theron is a giant woman too, right? She's tall.
She's a big girl. Yeah, she looks like she's big enough.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So when you look at people and their ability to perform, like unless they're doing like stealthy, sneaky stuff, like perfect example, like nobody had a problem with Captain Phasma. Why? Because Gwendolyn Christie is a large woman, and not in a sense that she's fat or anything.
No,
like
she's a big girl, dude.
She's just a big lady, right? She's a big lady.
You look at her in the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so for her to look,
she's taller than most men in that show.
Yeah, so for her to look physically opposing against her male counterpart actors, it makes sense. Now, is there some suspension of disbelief? Yes, but at least physically, she looks like she has the tools to bring something to the table. Where this gal that's playing Sabine, bless her heart, she's trying, but to see
she
her,
looks the part now, especially now she cut her hair.
Yeah,
she's still just a crying teenager when you she's depicted.
She looks the part, but at no means when I was watching Rebels did I think Sabine was not physically capable of doing all the things that she was doing.
Right.
Whereas in the television portrayal of her, I see her and I'm like, I just don't know if she can physically do all the things that she's doing. Like handling a sword, I get it. Anybody can do that. Handling a sword against an opponent, that's different.
Another critter.
Against the live enemy is a completely different thing. And guess what? That's for everyone, right? We've watched UFC for, damn near 31 years, and everybody's a black belt until they get punched in the face, right? Because size, technique, and velocity play a huge role in everything that we're doing, and even look at Ashoka as a character. What made Ashoka so good in the show wasn't her physical strength. It was her ability to maneuver, right? She used agility. She used the Shoto. She had the short sword. She brought in more capabilities than just, hey, I'm going to bludgeon you to death with this weapon.
To me, it's just a Jedi that's teaching somebody how to use a sword. There's a reason some are force sensitive and some just aren't. Now, Sabine in Rebels is a Mandalorian. She represented it quite well, but she wasn't. She was geek, and there's a lot of great backstory to that with what she did with technology and invention that ultimately not in her plan, but it betrayed her own people. And you don't get any of that story either.
Well, and that's a great storyline, and that would be a good, that would be a good nugget to discuss even in this show, right? And the Ahsoka show is because like, oh wow, like, hey, look, we've got a character that has, Sabine has a colorful history, so it's very appropriate that she wears different colors, because her history is colored as the color palette that she uses to do graffiti. And again,
she's a tagger. I was just gonna say,
But the other part of it is there's a big chunk of that is missed because people haven't watched Rebels. So now all you're seeing is, like I'm afraid that the show is coming off the rails, and this last episode is a perfect example of it, because it was just like, okay, what's the outcome that we're trying to achieve? Like there was no surprise, right? Oh my gosh, it's a giant hyperspace ring. Like, what did you see in episode 2 when you saw the giant hyperspace ring? Like, holy shit, they're stealing these engines from the Empire and putting them on this giant hyperspace ring. There is no, it would have been better to have that be a continuous episode and end after the fight, because then you've had some moments of breathing, and it's like, oh, hey, we have this outcome. Hey, let's go find out where this thing is. We put the tracker on we put the tracker on the hyperdrive engine, so let's go get it. And if the episode ended on the cliffhanger with Balin launching dudes in the woods, well, it makes sense because the hyperspace ring is orbiting the planet with the map that Morgan Elspeth looked into. So now it all makes sense. But when you had that fractured break and then you bring this like basically nothing episode, or actually the tail end of episode 2, and bring them together, you're losing something.
But that's exactly what makes it flat, because you're left there wondering, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
And then you nailed it. You're right in the middle of the story with no beginning or end, and it can go in any direction. And it's not coming off as something that is suspenseful.
Yeah. I just felt like it seemed flat to me.
I will say there's two things. There's a couple things I take out. It might be easy, perhaps a fourth. A lot of it has to do with what people are talking about. Others are online talking about. And one that I keep seeing is flashback-itis. The bottom line is people want to see Anakin. Everybody wants to see Anakin. So there's talk of that. Then there's talk about Rex potentially being in that, which, the only possible way I think Rex could even be in it is in a flashback.
But is it though? Because we know that Rex survived the Battle of Endor.
At the end of episode 6.
Yeah, so we know that Rex is alive. So Rex survived.
Well, he could be, but I mean, it just seems unlikely. Remember, Rex wasn't an unaltered clone. He was an altered clone. His lifespan is short.
Yeah, but even still, he still lived to Return of the Jedi. So he survived Order 66 and the entire Rebel Alliance. So is he still alive? Is he not? Like, one of the things, again, this is...
Yeah, but I mean, he'd be walking around with a cane by now, wouldn't he?
I mean, not really, because you got to think the clones were accelerated until they were mature enough to fight, but we don't know how they age after, 18 to 20.
There's some truth in that.
You know what I mean? So I get it. I understand your point. Like, I'm not saying that he's not alive or not, but it makes sense to kind of look at it and say, okay, what's the deal? What's the deal with Rex? Is Rex still alive? And if not, what's that aspect of the story? Because he and Ahsoka were together. So is the Ahsoka book not canon? Because there's a book about Ahsoka. Is that not canon? But it was written after Disney took over Lucasfilm. So which one is it? You know what I mean? Like, we're getting into the space where there's plot holes, and those plot holes are being self-generated. Like, it's one thing to have a plot hole. It's one thing to have a plot hole that, didn't make sense between the prequels and the original trilogy, because the original trilogy was written first. And like, oh crap, that's a detail that I forgot to fill in. But at this point, there's enough continuity to be like, okay, look, like, we have 7 seasons of the Clone Wars and 4 seasons of Rebels to kind of figure out what happened to Rex,
Yeah.
And so it makes you scratch your head at that point. There were a couple of like moments that were like, okay, that's okay. I see what they're trying to do here. Like when they dropped the blast shield on Sabine, and it's like, oh, this is like Luke Skywalker, fighting the probe in the Millennium Falcon. Similar-ish scene with like, Obi-Wan watching and kind of observing the whole thing go down. Whatever. I'm just not impressed by this episode. And like I said, it just seemed flat. It seemed like, they do have a runtime issue right now at Disney. I think, there are episodes of The Mandalorian season 3 that were too short. Andor had episodes that could have been way longer, I think, and not had, I think it just has to do with like, what is the plan overall for the series, right? Am I trying to make this a 2-season thing? Am I trying to make it a 1-season thing? Is there a plan? Is there, is there a show Bible that they're following to make this thing happen? Or is it literally just, hey, we're going to put this show out and hope people like it, And I think that's the feeling that I'm getting, because like when The Mandalorian landed, yes, there were criticisms, people were like, it seems too flat. It seems like hokey Star Wars, whatever. But it also was enough of a show, and it was unique enough that people were interested in watching it. And right now we're treading into the territory, and I think honestly, that's why Andor was such a hit, because you had this character that shows up in a movie, dies for the Rebel Alliance, and we know nothing about his backstory. So now we're going to fill it in. That works. That makes sense to me. That's why Andor was a hit. That's why The Mandalorian, the first season, worked. The second season worked. The third season didn't work as well, because at some point in there, we decided, is the Mandalorian going to be Grogu? Is it taken over by Bo-Katan? Or are we trying to set up the future Filoni-verse, which right now is not on very strong footing, in my opinion, because you've got a pretty lackluster Ahsoka show, and a Mandalorian finale that was tainted by, the guest hosting of Lizzo and Jack Black. Right. If we didn't have that episode, I think The Mandalorian season 3 would have been a little bit stronger. And I think they could have
cut that whole thing out, dude.
Yeah.
In Bo-Katan's confrontation with Axe, they could have maybe pulled that whole little piece apart. But I mean, you're talking about 10 minutes of material.
Yeah.
That was significant to that entire show. The rest was just, fun with Dick and Jane. And nobody cared. Another big thing that some people, fan reviews, people were calling it boring to go to your thing, and we talked about this on the last podcast. There's a lot of fill time that's consumed with posturing and modeling.
Yeah.
Do we really need 5 to 10 minutes of Ahsoka trying to figure out a map without a single word in it?
I
don't know. I got mixed feelings about it.
Honestly, to me, it just seems like everything since Kenobi, with the exception of Andor, has been tone deaf.
Yeah. Oh, Andor. I thought Andor was great. Great story, man. Whoever wrote Andor was on it.
Yeah, but you also
so well done and suspenseful.
Yeah, but the thing is, honestly, you can't F Andor up. You know what I mean? Because you already know what his outcome is. So if you know what his outcome is, you have to kind of build into that, right? Hey, I got this guy who really didn't want to be in the rebellion, how he ends up joining the rebellion and doing all these dastardly things that makes him look at Jen Orso in Rogue One and say, hey, I've done a lot of stuff, but if I'm going to die, I want to do something that's worth it. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of his story arc. Hey, I don't want to join the rebellion. I'm just trying to make money and survive.
We'll find out. We'll see if she shows up.
Well,
one thing's for sure is Saul Guerrero is still around.
Yeah. Well, and that's very, very fertile ground, is to have a younger version of Saul Guerrero running around, right? And maybe that's what makes Andor kind of gravitate towards the Rebel Alliance Mon Mothma style versus, straight up terrorism in the name of freedom that Saw Gerrera was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was a big fan of that.
And those are two opposing camps as far as the rebellion is concerned, right? Hey, do I want to have do I want to usurp a fascist with another fascist? Or do I want to usurp a fascist with a democratic republic? And we fight that in real time. So it's one of those things that it's relatable, so that's one of the things is even if you go as far as again, I'm going to jump on this one because I just, recently played it, is Jedi Outcast, right? Or no, Jedi Survivor. So in Jedi Survivor, what happens is he's fighting with Saw Gerrera, and then he just realizes at one point, he's like, man, I have been fighting the Empire 4 or 5 years and nothing has really changed. All we've done is killed a bunch of people, and we haven't moved forward with the rebellion, even though I've been fighting with Saw for all this time. And so there's a moment when the character goes, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I think that's what we're missing. I think we're missing that character arc. Like we know who Ahsoka is, right? We know who Ahsoka is. Disenfranchised person, walked away from the Jedi Order because of everything that happened to her with Barisafi, and it hurt her because she lost the closest relationship of her lives because she had been a Jedi Padawan since she was a child in the Jedi Order. And, Sky Guy and Kenobi were basically her family. So she walked away from her family because something just didn't feel right. And now, guess what? It still doesn't feel right, but now it's a whole damn show.
Yeah. Right. Another questionable one is the Inquisitor.
Yeah. Who is that?
The use of an Inquisitor. Why is that dude still alive? Aren't they all gone? Yet there's one dude with the same stuff still strutting around, and who's he serving? Yeah. Vader's gone.
Yeah, and that's who the Inquisitor.
And that's who they answered to.
Yeah,
the
Inquisitorius was Vader's thing. So
who
is he working for?
Like who's that dude answer to?
Like I said, I sent you that meme earlier, which I thought was hysterical. Like people think that it's going to be freaking, generation 1 of Snoke, which I think it's funny, it's laughable.
I mean, come on, dude.
But you know what it is? Yeah. It's people reaching across the internet trying to find an answer. Because
why don't they try finding the damn answers to the questions that are right in front of them? Like Shin Hati. What's going to happen to that girl? Do they look like those two are on the same page? Or is she just a good little Padawan running off like Darth Maul did, doing somebody else's bidding until, he couldn't?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I am I'm starting to get the feeling like Kenobi. Every episode I get in, the more and more disappointed I'm going to be, and come to the end and it's just going to be like, oh, man, like I've watched 8 hours of this and I have no better feelings than I had before. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like that part to me is a tragedy, because again, like you have this great platform, you have this excellent vehicle that you could use to make it interesting, and we still refuse. And I don't say we refuse. I legitimately think like the only way to save Star Wars, the only way to save Lucasfilm, and without going, completely crap house on this, is for them to just pause where they are, take the next 5 years to figure out what the stories are going to look like moving forward, and fire Kathleen Kennedy. Get rid of her.
I'm telling you, she knows where all the bodies are buried, man.
Like I'm assuming that KK has a backdoor copy of Epstein's Island's list. I mean,
she's got to, man.
You know what I mean? Like she's the turd in the punch bowl that's preventing the government from releasing this thing because she's got information on people that would completely get screwed over by this. Because like I watch these shows and I'm like, what in the actual F is going on?
It's funny you bring that up, man. I just saw recently. I hadn't watched it before. I don't know if you have. It's called The Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
About the chess player, the girl, right?
Yeah.
And come to my surprise, Moses Ingram was in that movie.
Yeah, she was great.
And she, dude, I was shocked. I was sitting here looking at it. I was like, it took me until the second episode to realize who she was.
The thing is,
she was great, man. Here's the thing. I was like, what happened?
She's not a bad actress. She's not a bad actress. What happened is they based the commentary of the material she was given in Kenobi off of her race. It had nothing to do with the color of her skin. It was
she was so horribly miscast for that role.
It was.
And they did not do her any favors at all. She is a good actress. I feel bad about half the crap I said about her.
Did you see Ambulance? She had a very small role in Ambulance as well. She played Yahya Abdul-Mateen's wife in Ambulance. And like, she was a good character. She was a good character. Yeah. And I mean, like, yeah, and that was an over the top Michael Bay action movie. So there's going to be things about it that are just like, whatever, suspension of disbelief.
Flamboyant.
They're gonna drive this ambulance and jump it off of a highway or whatever. Who cares? It's an action movie. It was a popcorn flick, but her role in it, although small, was good. Moses Ingram, I have nothing against her as a performer. What I have is an entire media arm of a large studio going, if you don't like this, it's because she's black. No,
see, that's what really pissed me off. McGregor said that too. And no, whether she is, and I'm sorry to say, I mean, she was great. It showed to me that she's actually a highly capable actress. Yeah, none of that crap went down in Kenobi. They got the wrong girl.
Yeah, she is a good actress. And what happened was they put her in a position where she had to do better. You know what I mean? Like she had to act, and you know what? It probably wasn't even outside of her scope as an actress. It was just it was just the material that she was given. Like, look, nobody buys it. Like, why? Because we've been watching Rebels for years, and there is no mention of her at all as a character.
Not sold.
Right?
Not sold. And that whole era stood out like a freaking sore thumb that you heard on the damn, job site. Yeah, bro, horrible, horrible.
And so, like I said, getting that feeling with Ahsoka, and the reason why that's happening is just it's the same way. It's the same way. Like, hey, we really want Ahsoka to be awesome, and everybody does. Like, there's no doubt. There's no person that I have talked to that says, I want the Ahsoka series to suck like Obi-Wan. Like, I don't know anybody.
Nobody's saying that. And dude, let me tell you, if you remember, I was saying it for months before Obi-Wan came out. I kept thinking, man, that is going to be one of the greatest things they ever did.
I think
flop.
I think everybody assumed that it was going to be. You know what I mean? I think everybody was like, oh yeah, Obi-Wan's going to be a hit. You've got Ewan McGregor coming back. You've got freaking, you got Hayden Christensen coming back, donning the cloak and the armor. Like, what was there not to be excited about? It's the same thing as like, hey, I should not be excited about Rosario Dawson reprising her role as Ahsoka. She was great in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Right? She was great. Hey, she came in. Yes, she's a little bit stoic, but she's also you got the feeling that Ahsoka was Ahsoka in The Mandalorian. Like, she looks at Din Djarin.
Yeah, but that's not. But she's not Snips, dude.
Well, and again,
I'm waiting for that character to come out.
Yeah, but you also got to think we've literally fast forwarded almost 30 years.
I know. Look, most people like you and me totally lose our sense of humor the more older we get. I can understand that.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it's just a part of her. How does that? It's like it's buried.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like they don't want to show it.
Right.
Like that's what it feels like to me. It's not that we don't want to see Snips. It's that Ahsoka is so closed off from everyone in the world that we're never going to get to see that part of her character.
3 episodes, bro. Not one smile on her face.
Yeah.
3.
And that's completely out of character. You get the over the shoulder look that you got a couple times.
The coy.
Wars. Yeah, like the over the shoulder Ahsoka look, right?
Right.
But what we haven't gotten is, well, maybe that's what we need to do. And maybe it's an acting choice by Rosario Dawson. Maybe it's directing. I don't know. But from a perspective of the Ahsoka that started off as everybody kind of like, meh, I'm not so sure about her. That is now this, crescendos at the end of the Clone Wars. Like, dude, the lightsaber battle between Ahsoka and Darth Maul single-handedly is the best animated one for sure, and is probably easily in the top 3, maybe the number 1 lightsaber duel in Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Because
that was one of the greatest by far. Well, easy top 3. There's no.
Yeah, but you think about it. It's easily the top 3. Why? Because you have the full embodiment of the animated version of Maul with Sam Witwer doing the voice and Ray Park reprising his role as the body, and then you have Ahsoka, a little bit more mature, a little bit more skilled, fighting, with Ashley Eckstein's voice fighting Darth Maul. Like,
right.
And credit to the actress that was the mocap actress for her. I can't remember her name, but
a lot of work, dude.
She was brilliant as well. Right? So there is no like, hey, look, we should be upset about this. And that's where everything kind of went off the rails for me. It's like, why are we doing this? Why is it so flat? I'm so disappointed that it's so flat. And it's like, man, I want a Star Wars show that, like, I was excited. Like when Mandalorian season 1 came out, no joke, when it was freaking 12:01 the next day, I'm staying up late to watch that episode. Then I go to sleep excited, wake up the next morning, and as I'm having my morning coffee, I'm watching it a second time.
I wonder if perhaps it's part of the formula that they always try to do. The only one they didn't use it on would have been Kenobi and Book of Boba. But man, it was like, the second episode's kind of dry or kind of flat, like the Frog Woman, right?
Yeah.
But then what happens in the very next one? Man, she runs into Bo-Katan and a couple other Night Owls.
And then the action.
And it got interesting like real quick.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. It could be any myriad of things.
I'm hoping that's what it is. And again, it's like Star Wars in the sense that, like, yes, you have peaks and valleys of actions and then exposition. All the Star Wars movies are like that. Big action sequence, exposition to fill in the blanks, big action sequence, exposition to fill in the blanks. If you watch A New Hope, you'll see that all the time.
Right.
That's not my concern. My concern is this stodgy wooden dialogue that it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I'm like, man, how did this happen? How did this happen to, a character that is so beloved like Ahsoka?
I know, right?
Yeah. But again, I think good. I've now resigned myself. I've put myself in Kenobi mode, and what that means is I am hopeful.
Both barrels, man.
Right, I am hopeful.
I still have hope.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the next episode will be better, but I won't be disappointed if it isn't. And that's sad because I like the episode, but literally there's nothing to talk about in episode 3. Like nothing. Yeah, cool. You had a lightsaber training segment.
Lightsaber training, and you ran from the bad guys for 30 minutes.
Yeah, but you also got to think that, that would be cool had we not seen that 100 times before. Yeah. It's like, look, we know that Sabine can handle a lightsaber. Why? We've seen her do it with precision in Rebels. So it's just a matter of shaking the rust off and getting back at it.
In all fairness, it really wasn't even that bad of a scene.
No, I'm not saying saying it at all that it was a bad scene. It was just disappointing in the way that it all went down. It's just there's no oomph. There's nothing to be excited about. Like, hey, when Mando walked in episode 1, go back and watch the first 30 seconds of The Mandalorian. When that door slides open and he walks
in the room,
like,
Kate's lying and shit.
Yeah, something is about to go down. Right now, Ahsoka walks into the room and it's like, I'm about to get 3 to 5 minutes of boring exposition, and I'm done. I had
not a word spoken.
Yeah,
not a smile cracked.
Like nothing that makes me say, okay, they're trying to engage with their audience. And that's the problem. And like I said, maybe Filoni has a secret in his back pocket, but it's kind of like, underutilizing Ahsoka is like putting a mythosaur on the screen and not having the thing come out of the water. We know it's there. It's Chekhov's gun. The gun has to get fired. And when you break with literary traditions like that, like, hey, if I see a bomb in a movie, well, I want to know if that thing is going to go off, right? Like, hey, if I see John Wick pick up a gun, I know he's going to shoot somebody. It's not a question of, oh man, he has a gun. Is he going to shoot somebody? I know he's going to shoot somebody. It's just how we get to the point where he actually has to use that device. And I think
we'll see something like that in the future. It'll come up.
I hope
there's some other people still running around the universe right now that we can definitely and most easily run into at any time. Boba's still alive. Mando's still alive.
And they have a relationship with Ahsoka, like they've seen her. Like Ahsoka would be great. You still got, and the other part of it is maybe, and again, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they are trying to avoid advancing storylines that could potentially cause fratricide with other shows, because the Bad Batch isn't done, but we know that they're out there, so they're still alive too, right? So the rebellion is still on. Do we know what happened to the Bad
Batch? No.
Are those characters still there? We don't know. But there's people that were involved in those characters that were still alive.
Those dudes are on the verge of being extinct around episode 4.
True. So it'll just be, but it'll be
interesting. And the clones are vanishing, like dropping like flies, man.
Yeah. Well, and that was also part of the Emperor's design too, was to get rid of those characters.
It was, and then I think that was completely the purpose of season 2 of Bad Batch.
Yeah,
the death of the clones. That's really what that whole arc is.
Yeah. Do we think they're ever going to recover? I just don't know. But like, my thing is, it's like I want Ahsoka to pull out of this nosedive like freaking Maverick after he dropped the bomb in the freaking gully and Top Gun. Like dude, get this thing. I don't care if it's a 10G turn and the freaking aircraft is destroyed. Like, you guys got to pull this thing out for me, because like right now I'm sitting here watching this going, what are we doing? You know, and it's sad because it's like it's the Kenobi playbook all over again.
No, we'll get it. This is Filoni's baby too. Keep that in mind, man.
Yeah,
his name's all over this dude, and
if it goes bad, like, hey Dave, take a page out of freaking Benioff and Weiss's book from freaking Game of Thrones, right? What happened with Game of Thrones? Those guys wrote such a shitty story at the end that they lost their Star Wars movie, and I don't want that to happen to Filoni. You know what I mean? Right. It's definitely something that, look, and I'll end my comment with this last and final thing. Here's the thing that I know, that flippin' Dave Filoni has the ability to make some great TV. Jon Favreau is a fabulous writer and director. Think about this. We would not have the MCU if it was not for Iron Man with Jon Favreau as the director. So the talent is there. It's like, what is preventing?
Well, he came later. I mean, I'd say we wouldn't without Blade. Well, Blade saved them all, man.
Well, Blade was the catalyst, but
you're right in the sense that what he did with Iron Man, guy flying around in this, in the atmosphere,
Iron
certainly helped propel Mando
completely. Yeah. Pushed that to the point where it was like, okay, yeah, I dig this, right? And so that's what my problem is. It's just like, look, I want a good show. But let's wrap this thing up. There's been episode 3 of Ahsoka on No Disintegrations. You got Rob and Dave here, waxing philosophical about Star Wars. But again, always welcome to hear your comments. If you got something for us, just shoot us a note. But definitely appreciate it. All right, we will talk to you guys next time. Thanks.
Deuces.